Can a life shaped by depression, suppressed emotion and profound loss become a force for hope? Aldwyn Altuney's story begins long before she became known as the media queen. As a child and young person, she absorbed the belief that anger was dangerous and learned to contain difficult feelings rather than express them. That emotional silence contributed to years of depression, a nervous breakdown, and periods when life felt unbearable. The loss of 4 friends to suicide deepened both her grief and her determination to do something meaningful with what she had survived. In this episode of Not Just a Story with Rose Davidson, Aldwyn shares how her personal pain gradually became connected to a larger purpose. Drawing on more than 4 decades in journalism, television, radio, print and online media, she began challenging the constant dominance of fear-based headlines by creating space for truth, gratitude, progress and hope. Aldwyn discusses the origins of Global Good News Day, the Global Good News Challenge and her advocacy for animal welfare. She also explores the difference between denying reality and deliberately widening the story so people can see that positive change is possible. This honest conversation offers valuable insight into depression recovery, emotional suppression, purpose-driven storytelling, positive media, and turning lived experience into social impact. It reminds listeners that transformation does not erase what happened. Instead, it can change what we choose to do with it. Aldwyn's journey shows how a painful chapter can become a public mission without losing its humanity. Her story invites us to examine the messages we inherit, the emotions we learn to hide, and the possibility that our deepest wounds may eventually guide us towards meaningful action. It is a reminder that hope is not passive. It is something we can practice, share, and build together daily.
Welcome to Not Just a Story with Rose Davidson, where lived experience becomes meaning and stories create impact.
Hello and welcome to Not Just a Story with Rose Davidson. I'm your host, Rose Davidson, and my guest today is Aldwyn Altuney. And we're going to be talking about her journey from depressed and suicidal to inspiring good news globally. Now, a little bit about Aldwyn. She is a mass media marketing expert and she's known as the media queen, and she is a TV host, speaker, photojournalist and author of over 30 international best-selling books. My goodness, that is a lot. With 42 years media experience, her PR company AA Expose Media is the only one she knows of that guarantees results in the mainstream media. She is passionate about inspiring more good news in the mass media to help decrease depression and suicide rates and lift people's spirits. She founded the Good News Day in 2018, which is run annually on August 8, and the free monthly Global Good News Challenge. She started that in June 2020, and I would have expected that would be through the pandemic, and I don't blame her for starting that Good News Challenge then. Also, she's an animal activist. She founded Animal Action Events in 2007 and has run 18 annual charity events so far, raising awareness, appreciation, and respect for all animals. Aldwyn, thank you for joining me as my very first guest on Not Just a Story. How are you?
I'm excellent. Thank you so much, Rose. And thank you for sharing that amazing bio that I wrote myself. A slight correction on that is we're actually up to our 20th year for the Animal Action Events now this year. So it's been an extraordinary ride.
Absolutely. Well done to that's a lot. Tell me, other than your bio, tell me a little bit more about your background and what prompted you to write and about suicide and, bringing more good news into the mainstream.
Thank you, Rose. Well, I grew up in Sydney's Northern Beaches area, born in 74. I have Greek, Turkish, Ukrainian background. So my parents actually migrated from Turkey in 1970 to Sydney. And growing up as a first generation Australian was very, very challenging. I was bullied as a kid. My parents did the best they could to fit into the Australian lifestyle. Dad was a civil engineer. Mum was an amazing housewife. Beautiful parents. And one thing Dad loved to do growing up is he loved to watch the news. And back then, there was no social media, back from 1974 to the 80s. Social media really only came about in 2000s, 2004, Facebook started. So back in that time, we got all our news from pretty much radio or TV. There were just a few TV stations back then. And we had a small house in North Balgowlah, and there was this one living room that we'd all come into after we'd had our dinner. And my dad would watch at least 3 hours of negative news every night. He'd watch the local news, the national news, the international news, world news. And I remember, seeing all this negative news, it really upset me. And in fact, to the point where as a child, I remember one night being so concerned about what I saw on the TV and the news that I remember, being in tears watching this news bulletin of all the crime and the wars and all the shocking things that were going on. And I remember going to my dad in tears, and I was obviously very empathic, very sensitive. And Dad, I said to Dad, why is the world like this? Why are people so cruel? And he hugged me. He said, darling, that's just how the world is. And then I started to see evidence of that. I started to see the bullying in the schoolyard. My friends would turn against me, and people would pick on me because my name was different or because the food I took to school was different. They would pick on me, and I never felt I belonged at home. And I really wanted to belong, at home or at school. And at home, also, it was very challenging because, in Turkey, what they do over there and in a lot of Middle Eastern countries is that the guys hang out with the guys and the girls hang out with the girls. And I had one brother, and my dad would always hang out with my brother and would spend a lot less time with me, kind of leave me to hang out with mum. And I realized growing up that, that unless I achieved, I wouldn't have my dad's love. And that's led to me being highly ambitious later in life. However, there was a period there in my teenage years where I went so off the rails after years of bullying, of years of watching negative news, years of seeing animal cruelty and people being nasty to each other, that I actually was running away from home at a young age. My dad was also very strict, and he had very strict rules. And whatever he said to do, I would generally do the opposite from about the age of 13 onwards. Now, I was actually sexually abused, excuse me, sexually abused when I was 13, when I went overseas on a Australian national table tennis trip, which I only recently actually recovered that from my memory, because sometimes with traumas that happen, sometimes we don't want to think about these traumas. And it was actually during an interview on one of our shows with a lady called Michelle Slight, who has been raped 7 times. And we're talking about sexual abuse. And it came to me that this time, when I was 13, that I was essentially raped by a 17-year-old guy who was on the trip. We were on this Australian national table tennis trip to China. And when I came back from that trip, I wasn't the same person. And Dad used to say to me, what happened to you in China? And I was so ashamed. I couldn't speak about it at all. And I became very angry also with myself, I guess, in some ways, for, finding myself in that situation. And I think I had very low self-esteem. And so whatever Dad said to do, I generally did the opposite. I hated my life. I didn't want to be here. I was drinking heavily. I was smoking heavily. I was doing drugs at the time. I was doing anything I could essentially to kill myself without, I wouldn't have had the heart to sort of hang myself or jump off a bridge or whatever. But I was very, very self-destructive, to the point that Dad kicked me out of home at 15 after continually disobeying his rules, because he used to say, my house, my rules. And one of his rules was, I wasn't allowed to stay at anyone else's house. And one night I got back from a Halloween party very very early in the morning. It's about 5 a.m. after this party. So I didn't officially sleep over the night, but I came back when it was sunrise. And that was enough for my dad to kick me out of home. And I moved into this crazy household in Sydney at the time with a drummer. His mum was an alcoholic, his sister was dealing drugs. And in this environment, I actually went from top of my primary school to failing everything in year 11 at high school. So I was top of North Balgowlah Primary School, failed everything in year 11 in this environment. We were partying every night. I missed half my classes in year 11. And then 6 months into that situation, there was a turning point, as most people will have a turning point in their life. And the turning point was I saw my best friend sleeping with my boyfriend in front of me at the time. And that was enough for me as a 15, 16-year-old to say, I don't want to live like this anymore. I don't want this lifestyle. And back then in the landline telephone days, I picked up the landline and I called my mum in tears and I said, can I please come home? I can't live like this anymore. And she had to check things with dad, and dad came back and he said, yes, you can come home under the condition that you study really hard and you work to turn your life around. And sure enough, I came back home and I did exactly that with the help of my brother. We actually changed environments, which was really important at the time. Went from Mossman High School to Forest High School for year 12. From failing everything in year 11, I managed to get into a media degree after my year 12 studies and went to Canberra, edited a university newspaper there, became actually the longest serving editor of the university newspaper back in Canberra, and majored in photojournalism and TV production with high distinctions at the time. So I actually then turned my whole life around again, and I found the media a really powerful way to impact change. Because I was seeing things in the mainstream media that I didn't like, things about female circumcision, people were shooting ducks for fun, battery farming of chickens, how cruel that was. All these things I was seeing that I wasn't happy about. And so I'd write about it or I'd share about it. And I found by doing that in some way, I was helping to make a difference. I thought if I could just impact one person with this story, then it's worth putting out there. However, before that, I actually featured in the media at age 10 for table tennis. And at age 11, I was on Cartoon Connection. So I became a very ambitious young table tennis player. And my dad used to say, anger is danger. So I internalized my anger for many years, which actually later led to depression. However, I did have table tennis as an outlet to just I used to have this killer forehand smash, and I would get a lot of anger out when I played table tennis. And also I did poetry back then when I was 13. And I actually did poetry on Radio Manly Warringah. I had a radio show at age 13 as well. In between that crazy period of rebelling and, falling off the rails and then coming back, I also used the media and expressing through writing, I guess, to let this anger out. And then that led to 20 plus years in the media. I worked as a journalist on TV, radio and print after that in Brisbane, Coffs Harbour, Mackay, Gold Coast, worked all around the place, and have had an amazing career now, 20 plus years now in my business as well, AA Expose Media. I've got several shows online now. And, I guess having experienced the darkness of having had depression, and then through life, I've actually lost 4 friends to suicide as well by the age of 45. And the first friend that I lost was a 31-year-old female friend of mine who actually hung herself. She had from the outside, she seemed to have a blessed life. She was the communications manager at the Gold Coast Airport. She had a lovely family. She had a beautiful boyfriend, and she had her own place. I mean, she seemed really set up. She seemed all together. A beautiful lady called Cassandra Dalziel. We were both 31 at the time, and I couldn't believe it when I heard she'd hung herself. And then the other 3 friends I lost were guys under the age of 45. And so seeing this, and this is just my experience, and I know a lot of people have been touched by depression or suicide in some way. And during COVID, what happened is, the suicide rates worldwide is about 1 million. That went 4 times that through COVID. So we've had, the mental health crisis out there is massive, which is why now I've decided to take it next level by, we had the Good News Day that I started on the 8th of the 8th, 2018. That was after my 4th friend suicided. And now next level with the Global Good News Challenge, which is a free monthly challenge that anyone can do on social media, sharing gratitude and good news.
And we so need more good news in the world, because through the years, the news, the mainstream media has always promoted things that are, sad or bad or, in, but it's informational, but it doesn't help the mental awareness for people. It makes them depressed. It makes them, not see things in a different light. And so I love the Good News Challenge. I've only participated once, but I do watch the videos from time to time that come through. And I think it's a great thing to have to happen. And I think our local news, I must say, does promote a lot of good news stories rather than the doom and gloom that we're used to seeing in mass media. So I'm grateful for that. And it keeps me up to date with what's happening. But I'm finding things like Facebook and now LinkedIn, so much as bad things are being promoted on there, and because of what's happening globally with the wars and the things that shouldn't be happening, that's causing a lot of distress as well. And I don't know how we're going to overcome those. Whether the current climate has to change, and the people involved need to be placed somewhere else. I'm not sure what we need to do to be able to get some closure and some way that we can feel better about what's happening.
Yeah, well, as they say, what you focus on grows, right? And there's no coincidences that the mainstream media and now, of course, social media, we have 5.8 billion of the world's 9 billion or so population are now active social media users. So this is, if you want to get your message to the masses, you've got to go where the masses are. And there's no coincidence that there is so much fear mongering that happens in the mainstream media, because this is how they keep people engaged. They keep people, especially on social media. If you watch one thing negative, suddenly you get a whole lot of stuff in your feed that's negative. So what you focus on grows. So the thing is that from the beginning of time, there has been bad things going on in the world, like dark energy, dark forces out there in the world since the beginning of time. And there've been the light forces and the light energies out there, right? There's been the good and the bad, or the positive and the negative, the light and the dark. It's like the yin yang of life. You're always going to have both sides. But when you watch a lot of mainstream media, or when you consume a lot of negative social media, then what can happen is you get a skewed view of life, and you suddenly think that the world is doomed, and what's the point of even being here, as I was for a long time, because I consume so much of it. So it's really important, I think, nowadays to put things in perspective and to also focus on things you can be grateful for, because as much as life might seem hard for you right now, consider people in war-torn countries right now who have no food, no shelter, no electricity, no running water. There's a lot of people out there that are a lot worse than we are right now. And even for those people, I guess the ones that have survived war-torn situations, okay, they might have lost family members, but they can be grateful that they're still alive, right? And when you have breath, you have hope. Where you have breath, there is always hope.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
it's just what we focus on will grow, and realizing that we are being channeled and programmed through the media all the time. And when you see this, the way I consume news now, it's always that interesting that that's going on. Like it's you have to sort of remove yourself a little bit from the emotional side of it, because when people are in fear, they are controlled as well. And the word government actually means mind control. And the government, the media, these very dark elites that are out there in the world, they're all in bed together, right? So there's a lot of dark forces that are running our version of reality that we're seeing in this 3D version of our life. The thing to realize, we are spiritual beings having a human experience. And the more we connect with our, intuition, or our God state, or our, the love, the universal love that is all around us, the more we connect with that, the less we are going to be shaken by the negative news, right? And so we're building that building that light within, which is there actually. It's just there. It's just for a lot of people, they've just shut it down or rejected it or not owned it. We all have a whole lot of love inside us, and we do belong and we are good enough. However, our humanness has made us feel small over time because, as particularly in Australia, it's about rise to the middle, right? We're not encouraged to, go out there and live amazing free lives. We're conditioned to be slaves to the system. And more people now are starting to wake up, and they're starting to see things differently. And things like the Global Good News Challenge are brilliant because people are focusing on gratitude and they're focusing on the good news. And then that ripple effect of change is then going out to everyone who sees those videos, everyone who shares that gratitude. It's a beautiful thing where we either lift each other up, we're either green and growing or ripe and rotting. So just notice where you are, wherever you are, it's okay. We go up and down on this journey of life, the roller coaster ride, up and down, up and down. The thing is when you have your low moments, snap out of it as soon as possible, get the learning, and then move back up again, because most people just want to be happy. If you want to be happy, then it's important to focus on things that bring you joy, things that bring you peace, love, gratitude, enlightenment, whatever that is for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you know that I'm an advocate against domestic and family violence and mental health awareness because, I've lived both. I'm a survivor of both. I'm still living through mental health challenges and have done since I was a small child. So, I've often thought about doing harm to myself because, I didn't see another way out. This I didn't really want to die. The fact being that I just didn't want to live the life I was living. I didn't want to be where I was. And when I made an attempt, I was always told that I was attention seeking because there wasn't that understanding about what someone is going through when they want to take their own life or they think about harming themselves. So what is your understanding of, and I know you've lost 4 friends, and there's always that, what could I have done better, or could I have changed something, or could I have been there sooner, or was I looking for the right things? What is your understanding of why people, feel that they need to take their life, and how did you cope with that?
Oh, look, it's always really, really, really hard to accept that someone has chosen to end their own life. It's really hard to accept that. And at the end of the day, it was their choice, right? Whether we like it or not, the people that get hurt the most usually are the ones left behind that are missing that person, right? However, we have to respect that was their choice for themselves. And with this roller coaster ride of life, as I say, sometimes with these people that have depression, as I've had depression too in the past, and in the past, before I did a lot of personal development work, I would stay depressed sometimes for 3 months at a time. I wouldn't want to get out of bed. I'd go to bed crying. I'd just get up to go to the toilet. I just didn't want to live, right? It was horrible. It was a horrible way to do life. And the people that actually go the extra mile to take their own life, they have come so low that, as you say, they see no way out of the life they're living. They see no hope with the situation they're currently in. And the thing to remember is this too will pass. At the end of every breakdown, there is a breakthrough. And this is what's so important. Life is a roller coaster ride. It's just stay on that roller coaster ride. Just strap yourself in, right? Put that seatbelt on, strap yourself in, because we have these highs and lows to teach us things. This is part of our, spiritual purpose or our learning in life, is to go through these challenges to learn things. And I truly believe this is why I do what I do now, because I've gone through those dark times. I've experienced that mess, I've turned my mess into my message. I've experienced that mess of that. And yes, it is absolutely tragic. And I'm sorry to hear that you also felt that way, Rose. And I'm so grateful that you didn't take your own life, because look at how much joy you've brought, and how many people you've had, over 600 episodes of your other podcasts, and that you've shared so many amazing stories. So thank you for not choosing to end your life, because the fact is, at every moment in any day, we are impacting lives around us, whether we're conscious of it or not. right? Our energy is impacting people around us. Now, a lot of these people who were depressed, in fact, my friends that suicided, they didn't want to see anybody actually they were so depressed, they just didn't want to see anybody. And they became their own worst enemies
Enemies, yeah.
by the conversations they were having in their head. And I would say that they would have had this conversation that they felt all alone. It's a very common conversation. And I actually did an interview with a lady called Tracy Corman a while ago on Media Queen TV. It was actually about 9 years ago now. And it was about how to overcome abuse and depression. And we shared our experiences of how we overcame abuse and depression. And I always say to people, if you know anyone who's feeling depressed or has been abused or is not coping, watch this video, because you will see this is a very common thing to
Mm,
feel, is that there's times we all feel really down. We all feel really dark at different times. Not everyone will admit it, right? But 1 in 3 people have depression that we know about, which probably means it's more like 2 in 3 people at
mm,
some point will feel really low in their life. And, look at this as, okay, what can you learn from those experiences? Because I truly believe that everything happens for us, not to
mm,
us. We're not the victim of our circumstances. There's a reason we go through those situations. It's like the butterfly doesn't become a butterfly until the caterpillar goes through the cocoon itself. If you try and help a butterfly out of that cocoon, it's not going to have enough blood in its wings to be able to fly. So we have to go through certain challenges ourselves, but at the same time, realize you are not alone, and there's always help out there. And there's some amazing groups out there like Beyond Blue, Are You Okay? There's some amazing groups out there that will help people who are either feeling depressed or suicidal or feeling down in some way. And just notice the conversations you're having with yourself as well.
yeah, that's the ones. They're the ones. It's the stuff that's in your head that you're talking about. Because I've got bipolar and complex PTSD, sometimes I get this negative stuff, and I just have to say, "Stop, Rose. You're not there anymore. You're not that person. You've got things to look forward to," and I have to stop the negative chatter. Um, because
Yes.
otherwise, then my depression just gets worse and worse and worse, and then I end up just being like comatose, sitting on the in the chair and not doing anything. And that's just no way to live your life. And so I have made a conscious effort, and I'm quite aware of my own when I'm getting depressed or when I'm in a manic phase, that I can sort of work through them now, because I've realized what triggers are, and how to overcome them. But sometimes it's just really, really hard to get over that depression. I love the manic things, except I spend a lot of money that I haven't got. That's the only wrong thing about being manic. But being depressed is such a terrible place to be. I mean, and depression is not just having a bad day and you have, maybe a week of just feeling, and not doing anything. Depression is like really where you just feel that the world's against you, everyone hates you, all your flaws, all the things that you think badly about yourself. I'm not good, pretty enough. I'm too fat. I'm, too loud. I'm too much. All those things, just are compounded because of all the negative chatter that you have in your head. And you have to really, and you do have to turn that around. You've got to start saying good things to yourself, positive things, and getting you out of that depression is challenging.
Yes, it can be challenging. And when you look at the science behind it, we have 60,000 thoughts a day as human beings. The average person, 60,000 thoughts a day. Now, for most people, 98% of those thoughts are the same thoughts we had yesterday, and 80% are negative for most people. So if you look at just that alone, we have all these thoughts going on in our head. And then I do believe true also that there are entities, that there are dark entities out there. Some people say ghosts, or they say, but I do believe if we are spiritual beings having a human experience, which actually it's scientifically proven that we are by Dr. Hawkins, psychiatrist from America, it's proven we are 99.9% energy, frequency, vibration.
Mm,
Okay, as human beings. And so if that's the case, if we are spiritual beings having a human experience, sometimes some dark entities will also want to inhabit our bodies, particularly, if we are, positive, or, we will be challenged. We will be challenged. And this is where, the Christians, do all sorts of, speaking in tongues, and, and different religions have different ways of representing this, right? And we won't get into the spirituality or religious side of things. However, I do believe dark entities sometimes will also come in to attack, and we need to be very conscious of that. And this is where doing the inner work is so important. And this is where, I've invested about $1 million in my business and personal development over the last 20 years. Now, I'm not suggesting that you need to invest $1 million in business and personal development. However, for me, it's been part of my own self-healing to hang out with entrepreneurs and hang out with people that are doing amazing things and living full lives, and, people who I really admire, or, whatever that is that they're doing, people who are living in joy. And it's always a choice at any moment. Hurt people, and healed people, heal people. And the first person we need to heal is ourselves, and be conscious of the conversations we're having with ourselves. Otherwise, we can easily just downward spiral. And as easily as you can downward spiral, you can also choose to upward spiral. And one of the best ways to do that is to do something you enjoy and to get into gratitude. So one thing for me that was huge when I was feeling really depressed, eventually one of the things that pulled me out of it is I would go to the beach. Now, for those that are near the beach, I would just go to the beach and I would get myself into the ocean. And I always found that was an amazing way to just wash away any of the crap. And then as I went into the ocean, every time I went under a wave, I would think of something I'm grateful for. Every time I went out under a wave. So then by the time I came out of the ocean, not only have I grounded myself, I've got the magnesium, I've got generally sunshine, vitamin D, your whole body, moving your body, exercise, right? Even if it's just walking to the beach or on the beach, get in the ocean, that's something that brings me so much joy. And so immediately I would shift from a negative state to a positive state. And it's as simple as that. It's actually, a choice in a heartbeat. We can think of something we're grateful for, but when you're that depressed, it's very hard to think of anything you're grateful for.
Absolutely.
Right? When you're feeling that depressed. So then it's just noticing the conversations in your head, and maybe just, journaling them out, whatever conversation's happening in your head, let it all out somehow, release it. You don't have to carry the burden of the world on your shoulders, right? We're all, navigating our way through this human experience. And if you can find something that brings you joy, whatever, it could be cooking for you, it could be getting creative. Art therapy is a brilliant thing to do. For me, writing out angry poetry was a great thing for many years. It helped release it for me. Some people go into the bush and they just scream their head off, right? I do recommend, don't be cruel to anyone else, right? If it just, as you're releasing your anger and sadness and whatever, let it out, and then come back to what are you grateful for right now in this moment. And your heart is something you can be grateful for. Your heart beats for you. I believe it's something like 60,000 times a day, or 50. It's a lot of times a day. Our heart beats for us. It's extraordinary how our bodies work. We are 1 in a billion by birth. By birth, we've been 1 billion swimmers to get to the finish line, roughly. There's a reason you're here on the planet, or your little soul has come through your body. We're here, I believe, to make the most of this human existence. So why make it harder for ourselves? And we tend to do this because we've been conditioned through the education system and through the mainstream media, and we've been conditioned to live in drama. And the minute you get conscious to, I've been living in drama, I'm making things more complicated than they need to be. They really don't need to be this complicated at all. Then as soon as you're conscious to how you're behaving and what you're doing and saying, and, even as you look at yourself in the mirror, next time you brush your teeth, looking at yourself in the mirror, notice the conversations that come to your mind. Could you look at yourself and here's a challenge for you. Look at yourself, look eye to eye in the mirror and say, I love you. I truly, truly love you. Right. And love yourself. Find ways to love yourself exactly as you are, exactly as you're not. Everything has brought you to this point in your life. You can't change the past. So it's, what are you going to do with the future from this point forward? How do you want to live your life? And if you can think it, if you can see it, if you can feel it, if you can believe it, you can make it happen.
Absolutely. And I do agree with you. Sometimes it's hard, but, being true to yourself, being authentic and loving yourself is so important in how we relate to others and relate to ourselves. Now, Aldwyn, I want to touch on your book, Fear to Freedom. Can you tell me a little bit about what's in the book and where people can find it, and the upcoming new book?
Yes, wonderful. Thank you. I was just doing a quick search. Oh, here we go. The human heart beats 100,000 times a day. There you go. 100,000. So I said 60,000. I was sort of close. Uh, don't let the facts get in the way of a good story, as they say. It was just a open loop in my head that I had to clear. So there you go. The heart beats for you 100,000 times a day. Thank you for the question. Fear to Freedom. This is my 30th book project that I've worked on. This is my I guess first total self-creation. I guess I've edited other books. I've had chapters in other books. But this one here, I teamed up with Leanne Clune and we put Fear to Freedom Series 1 out last year. And this is with 13 different people from around Australia sharing their fear to freedom stories of how they've transformed fear or darkness in their life in some way and come to a place of light and the wisdom they've learned on that journey. And everyone has a different story. We quite often compare ourselves to others. It's a very common thing, or we think we're not good enough in some way, right? Those three big fears that you're not good enough, don't belong, and I'm not loved. They're the three biggest fears, and they're all rubbish. So you can let them all go. This has been an extraordinary project, and so proud of the people that came forward to be in the book, because many of these people never shared their story before. So it's a beautiful legacy for them. And now we're putting together Fear to Freedom Book 2, 2026. I'm teaming up with Dame Rita Rose for this year. So right now we're inviting people who are interested in sharing their story. We're actually going to nurture and we've got a whole program around this where we coach people and we help extract the gems of their story and help them get out there. And we're going to be launching in Sydney and the Gold Coast as well with this book this year. Like we did last year, it became Amazon bestseller in 3 categories. So we're looking to do the same this year or better. It's an amazing project. So if people go to linktree/Aldwyn, that's linktr.ee/Aldwyn, you'll find all my social links there. And in there, you could message me on my main Facebook account or on LinkedIn. They're 2 good places to get me, or Instagram, either of those places to send me a private message. And if you're interested in finding out more about being in the book, then reach out and also connect on all of my socials there as well. You'll see the Global Good News Challenge link. You'll see on my website, we've got 5 top tips to gain TV exposure. And yes, while there's a lot of negative mainstream media out there, there is also a lot of amazingly positive media out there too. We have Good News Network, we have Sunny Skies News. There's most mainstream news channels will have some element of good news, right? Even news.com has a good news section. It's just that sometimes you have to go looking for it to find it, but there are more and more positive news. Good News Daily is another one. There's more and more positive news sites coming out, which is fantastic to see. And hats off to everyone who's sharing some good news and positivity out there.
Absolutely, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Aldwyn, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us. I look forward to receiving your story for the Impactful Voice Project as my movement that I've created last year, and I'm really happy for the people who've contributed so far, because you never know whose life you might save by sharing your own story. So it's been lovely to chat with you. Thank you so much for joining me, and I'll be in touch and we'll talk soon.
Thank you so much, Rose. It's been a pleasure.
Bye-bye.
Bye.